Well, hello. Welcome, everyone, all of our foodie film friends. Welcome to our Friday night, the Flatirons Food Film Festival. And I thought about that one in advance because today we have the honor of having the guy who takes credit for naming the Flatirons Food Film Festival, John Lehndorff, as part of our panel discussion. And if you spit while you say the name of the Flatirons Food Film Festival, then you can thank him for that. So welcome, everyone. It is our last night of a week of food films, and we've had a wonderful time. We've had a lot of people join us, and thank you. My name is Megan. I am here for the last time on film for a while, so you won't see me again on video, hopefully. We'll be live next time in person when we do our next festival. Tonight, setting the bar, fabulous movie. We have an all-star panel lined up. And before we get to that, though, I do have to do a few announcements. So I just want to clarify for viewing. If you haven't finished this film, or if you want to watch it again or tell someone about it, it will be available until basically midnight, 11:59 p.m. tomorrow, February 6th. So there's still time for people who want to jump in and see this movie. All other tickets that you have activated will expire tonight, February 5th at 11:59 p.m. But you have 72 hours from the moment that you click play. So if you start something tonight with play, but you don't finish it till tomorrow, you have 72 hours. I don't know if that clarified it at all. So my apologies on that clarification. We're gonna be doing a survey and some drawings. So after this whole festival is done, you're gonna get an email with a link to our festival survey. And your feedback is really important to us because it helps us apply for grants and it helps us plan for upcoming festivals. And as a token of our appreciation, we're going to be holding drawings for those who complete the survey, and prizes are going to be included in all kinds of gift boxes filled with Colorado artisanal food. There's donations already from Bookcliff Vineyards. You'll learn more about the prizes when we get you that email, but just know that there's going to be gift cards and things. So we do want you to participate, and we hope that helps you just give us a little bit of feedback. And there's going to be a cinematic art show. Our gallery, one of our sponsors, has an exhibit of art inspired by the festival, and that continues until February 21st. That is located right in downtown Boulder by Savory Spice Shop, one of our other sponsors. So go get your cabinet refreshed with some spices and check out some food-related art. And some of it is available for sale. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce John Lehndorff. He has been writing about food in Colorado and across the United States for 40 years. He is a celebrity in our local food scene and an expert on pie. He holds monthly chocolate tasting experiences with the Boulder Bookstore, and they're ongoing. You can jump in and learn all about chocolate with him. He's dedicated himself to chocolate over the last year. I guess being holed up in a pandemic will do that to you. And he's here with an all-star lineup of guests who are going to talk about the film. So without further ado, welcome, John, and welcome, guests.
Thank you. And yes, I am responsible for naming the Flatirons Food Film Festival because of an excessive affection for alliteration. Try saying that fast 5 times. And I've been leading some wonderful chocolate tastings over the past year for a chocolate club at the Boulder Bookstore, and also for families with members across the country, and also for company groups who can't get together because of the current situation. And it's a wonderful time. And what we do is we only taste the best chocolate in the world. And these are bean to bar chocolates that are produced by very specific artisans who know where the chocolate comes from. So I'm not going to go through the entire tasting, but there's two things I wanted to tell you about chocolate. The first thing is that I hope after watching the movie and maybe tasting some of these chocolates, that you understand that you want to not, for Valentine's Day, you don't want to eat chocolate that's sitting on the shelf from Hershey's and Nestle and Cadbury and Guittard and a bunch of other major companies, because they can't guarantee to you that the chocolate wasn't raised and produced without child labor, slavery, and destroying the rainforest. I mean, other than that, it's fine chocolate. But we're focused on the good stuff and the kind where you know exactly where it comes from. The other thing I can tell you about chocolate from my own personal experience is that you don't actually know how to taste chocolate. You think you've been doing it since you were like 3 years old. But in order to get everything out of these great chocolate bars, there's a way to do it. And now I'm going to talk you through how that happens. The first thing I always tell people is look at the packaging. So I want to tell folks that we have through two sources, we sourced 3 chocolate bars for everyone, and I'm going to talk about them individually. And the first one is from Parliament Chocolate. And what I tell people about tasting any chocolate bar is look at the packaging. In this case, it's wonderful packaging. It tells you who grew it, how they processed it, where it came from, and it also gives you a sense of how they're treating the environment. That's the first step. The second step in tasting chocolate is when you open the bar, the first thing you do is take a big piece of chocolate and press it up against your nose and inhale. And hopefully it's warm, and you start to smell different things in it. This is a I can't see the front of it. Here's a Raka. It's a bananas Foster flavored chocolate, and it smells completely different. Once you smell the bar, there's another thing that you got to do. It's the sound of chocolate. I don't know if you can hear it snap, but if your chocolate doesn't snap, then it's probably not very good chocolate. It's very important, and that means a quality cocoa butter, often from the same plants that produce the cocoa. And the next thing is tasting. I'm not going to taste it with it in my mouth because, it'll be hard for you to understand what I'm saying. But what's important is that a piece at a time, you let it melt completely. You can chew it if you want, but you have to sort of be Zen-like and let it sit in your mouth and really let it wash over. What you're going to find out is that the initial taste, it's not just chocolatey. It could be a little acidic, or it could be sweet. And over the time that it's in your mouth, it develops and reveals other tastes and aromas and things. And this, despite the fact that many of these chocolate bars only have 2 ingredients, cocoa beans and sugar, and nothing else. And if you want to, for a point of comparison, look on the side of a Cadbury bar and look at the ingredients, and that might tell you something about whether or not you want to eat something like that. Different people have different taste buds, so maybe a lot of these chocolates have tasting notes, and they'll tell you, you'll note a minerality or subtle nuances of coconut or something like that. If you don't smell that, that's okay too. But the idea is to appreciate what it took to get that chocolate there. And at the end of it, it's to spend a second and appreciate where the chocolate got to in your mouth. And when you taste these fabulous chocolates one after another, you're just amazed by how different they are. The three chocolate bars that we offered for this film, the first one is from Dandelion, a wonderful chocolate company that does serious work doing the right thing. This is the Dandelion Ambanjo. That's from Madagascar. It's 70% chocolate. Let me say this about percentages. Yeah, they matter, obviously. More higher percentage, more cocoa. But as a famous chocolate person once said, 70% of Kraft is Kraft. And so it matters to a certain extent, but if it's slightly less, that doesn't necessarily mean it's less quality. But this chocolate, the Dandelion, is just it's a blast of fruity flavor. It's just not a boring bar. It doesn't taste like caramel or marshmallow or anything. It tastes almost like a jungle. And it's an excellent example of tasting the place it comes from, which is the jungle, of course. The second bar is from Parliament. It's from Tanzania, the Kilimanjaro Valley. And if I did my research right, I believe that the name of the valley means heaven. And when you taste this bar, it's very much heavenly. It's really an unusual, and so this is just cacao and sugar, and you can taste elderberry in there. The aroma has citrus in it, and afterwards it just lingers around in your mouth, and it's a beautiful bar. It's smooth. It's not bitter. It's not. It's just a happy tasting bar. So also a very good one. And finally, what I think of as it's a dessert bar. For me, there's like two categories of bars. There's the serious bars. It's like salad and soup. This is a dessert bar. This is the Raka Bananas Foster bar. So it's 66% cacao, but it also has dried banana in it and extra cocoa butter to make it smooth, and a little bit of vanilla. And it's totally organic, and it's a party. It tastes very much like Bananas Foster. You almost wish you had a hurricane, to drink with it, and it tastes like tropical, and there's a taste of raisins in there, black tea, and all kinds of cool stuff coming out of it. So it really is it's a great bar and well worth tasting. And I hope that everyone has the experience of tasting some of these bars. The final thing I'm going to say is that these bars are often quite expensive, or at least relative to the crappy chocolate. It's a lot more expensive than a Nestle's Crunch bar, and with good reason. The people that are growing it are actually getting some of the money. The people that are processing it and making it possible to get it here make a little bit of money. And hopefully it's not destroying the environment that it's being grown in. Hopefully it's nurturing it and saving some of these communities out in the jungle. And it's well worth supporting. So if you'd like to join me for any of these chocolate tastings, you can check out the Boulder Bookstore's Chocolate Club. So thank you very much. And now I think Megan is going to introduce everybody. I
I
hope.
think she left that to you, John.
Oh, I wasn't actually prepared to do that thing. Megan, are you there?
We can introduce ourselves too.
Why
Yeah.
don't you? What?
Yeah,
Okay.
let everyone introduce themselves because then they
Okay.
can say as much or as little about themselves as they want. And you know, it wouldn't be an online festival without a little miscommunication glitch. Well, I love it. We're good. I'm gonna back out of here.
Okay, Tim, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Tim Shepard. I'm the director of the film that you hopefully made it all the way through. I'm here with my wife and producer, doesn't like to be on camera, so here she is. That's Amy Burns, who was a major part of making the film as well. Currently in Australia, waiting out the pandemic to see if we can go back to filming in interesting places. But yeah, thanks for watching. It's such an honor that people get to watch it still, even though people can't come to cinemas very much. We're just very proud and happy that these kind of festivals can still go on and let people come and watch good food and celebrate producers and support independent cinema. So thank you.
Nate?
Hi, I'm Nate Hodge. I'm the co-founder of Raaka Chocolate, based in Brooklyn, New York. And if you saw the film, you saw a peek into my factory. Yeah.
And Greg?
I'm Greg D'Alessander. I'm the chocolate sorcerer at Dandelion Chocolate in San Francisco, California. Similar to Nate, there was some footage of our factory in the film as well. And I have to say, Flatirons Food, Film, and Festivals are all four are great things. So it's very exciting to be able to experience all four of these things together at last.
Along with some chocolate, which
yeah,
you know,
yeah. It's not an F. I mean, it's good.
Fun. It's fun. And Steve, who may be the farthest. I don't know if you're the farthest away, but you know, you're pretty far.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Steve Burgin. I'm the founder of Conservation Cacao, and I work with cacao farmers around Latin America, principally in the Amazon, and it was a real pleasure to be able to participate in the film, have everyone come down and see the places where we're working in the Peruvian Amazon, and understand hopefully from the film the connection that exists between where the cacao is grown out on these agricultural frontiers, understand something about the genetics of cacao, which is originally from the Amazon, and the work that we're doing to save some of those origin varieties, and how all of that connects back up to the chocolate that you can buy and take home.
Great. And I think we have a question, actually. Tim, how did you get connected to this movie, this idea? What was the genesis of making the movie?
It all happened accidentally, as most good projects do. But my wife and I were living in San Francisco, and we were doing a lot of commercial projects there, and we'd had enough. So we bought a truck, put a camper on the back of it, and started driving around trying to find something to sink our teeth into and a new place to live and have an adventure. So we drove around for 9 months and ended up driving down to Guatemala, and where we'd actually originally met. And I was like, we've got to find something down here. There's so much interesting stuff in Guatemala. And the first night we got there, I went out for some beers and I sat down next to Steve, and he started telling me, he's this crazy guy in a bar telling me about cacao and sustainability and how, cacao can change the world. I was like, this is kind of interesting. And he's like, well, I'm going down to Peru in a few weeks with some chocolate makers. You should come. And I was like, oh, cool. I'll grab a camera and I'll come down. And then Thanks for nothing, Steve, but here we are.
Oh. So Nate,
I'll take that back. Thanks for a lot, Steve. I'll retract my statement. Thank you a lot.
We
Thank you.
didn't get you drowned in the river Tambo, so
Yeah, barely.
Well,
you're lucky stars.
well, so that brings up the question, Steve. How did you become entranced by cacao in the first place? Besides eating a
Well,
lot
I
of
had
chocolate.
spent a lot of time traveling around Latin America when I was just out of college and really fell in love with it, fell in love with the rainforests around the different countries, and had always wanted to do something to go back and try and work on conservation. So at a certain point, I had been living in New York and working in business and decided that it was the right time for me to go down and get to work. And I wasn't sure what I was going to work on. I was thinking about ecotourism or coffee or other kinds of sustainable crops. I wanted it to be something that was connected to product and ideally to what people are eating. But as soon as I started really to learn about cacao, I realized how beautiful it all is, but also cacao is an orphan crop, which just means basically that it's been ignored. There's been very little research, very little help given to farmers, and that most farmers are extraordinarily underpaid. There's a lot of work that can be done there to improve quality that gets to a consumer, and at the same time use that improvement in quality that should be connected to an improvement in price for the farmers to do conservation work, to work in areas on agricultural frontiers where cacao is shade grown, but where we can actually improve the productivity and the sustainability if we're working with those farmers.
Well, that leads in nicely to the next question, and I'll put this one to Greg and Nate. If a bar of Kraft chocolate costs $10, what's the approximate breakdown of where the money goes? How much of that goes to the cacao producers and harvesters? Nate?
Sure. So it'll probably be a little different for both Greg and I, because no two businesses are the same.
Sure, but in general.
So in general, the cacao is about a tenth of that cost for us. So our chocolate bars tend to retail for like $6 or $7. So about 60 cents of that is the cacao. The bars themselves cost us like around $1.60 to make. And then we sell most of our bars to distributors for anywhere between like $2.70 and $3. So in that $1.60, you have the packaging, you have all the labor, you have the utilities, you have the depreciation of the machines, and then that $1.60 to $3, you have all the sales labor, you have all our admin labor, you have all of our payroll taxes and our health insurance. So I've been doing this for 10 years. 2020 was the first year that Raka got very close to break even. So no one's getting rich off of this on the chocolate side. But yeah, to answer your question, it's about a tenth of the final cost of the chocolate bar is the cocoa beans.
Right, but the way you've set it up, you know that money actually goes back into the pockets of the farmers.
Yeah, we have the breakdown. You actually have it like on the inside of our bars. If you have the Bananas Foster bar with you right now, if you turn over the label on the inside, it will tell you the price that was paid. And we've started putting the farm gate price, which is the price that's paid to the farmer and not the price that we buy the cacao from. I'm not sure if that one specifically has that information on it, but it may.
Price we paid in 2019 was $3.80 a kilogram.
There you go.
There you go. Greg?
Yeah. So actually very similar. With almost any product that's sold in a store, about half of the money goes to the retailer themselves, right? And so like in a $10 chocolate bar, whoever you're buying it from, $5 of that $10 goes to the person you're buying it from. I mean, it's mostly covering their costs and expenses, etc. And then with the $5 that's left, we're actually very similar. It's about 65 cents of most of our bars are 70% bars. And 70% bars means 70% of the weight of the bar is cocoa beans. We have 60-gram bars or 58-gram bars, and so when you do that math out, it comes down to about somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to somewhere in the neighborhood of 45 to 50 cents per bar is the price of the cocoa. Then you add in the sugar, the packaging. In our case, it's the foil. The paper comes from India. It's recycled. It's recycled cloth is how the paper's made. And then for us, a big part of the price is the labor. We're an urban manufacturer, and like in San Francisco, part of the reason we do make our chocolate in San Francisco is because I think manufacturing has kind of taken this path where it's moved out to other cheaper parts of the country and the world, but it also means that, you know, cities that you live in, such as San Francisco, turn into condos and offices. And so we're excited to continue to do things in the city outside of offices and condos. And so for us, it's manufacturing. It does mean, though, that, you know, we're paying our staff a lot more than you would necessarily pay in a sort of cheaper place. And so a lot of that money is going to paying our staff. And if you're curious exactly how much we pay for all of our beans, we don't have it printed on the label, which I love that Nate does that. We do have it in a sourcing report, and I'm pasting the link in here, and I believe it's going to get passed on to everybody. So this is our 2017-2018 sourcing report. We do it every 2 years, and we're working on 2019, 2020 now. But in that sourcing report, you can see how much we're paying for all of the cocoa. I do think, without being too long-winded, which is a problem of mine, Nate mentioned farm gate pricing. I do think one of the things that is really important for people to understand is that there is the money paid for the cocoa, but there are people in that value chain doing important work, such as shipping it across the world in a shipping container, and doing quality control on it, and, you know, all of these sort of different aspects. And so the price that you pay for the cocoa itself is not necessarily the price that the farmer gets. And if you look at the world market price, so our average price for cocoa that we paid in 2017-18 was around $6.80 per kilogram on average. The world market price during that same time was somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.30 per kilogram. So we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 times the world market price for cocoa. That being said, some of that money is going to intermediaries who are doing work to ensure that the cocoa from the farmers are able to get to us as well.
Well, let's, instead of the numbers, I guess, because context is everything. So Steve, when what do these payments mean to the farmers out there in on the edge of the jungle harvesting cocoa? What does it mean for them that they get this income?
Sure, no, it means a lot to them. It's difficult to translate, really, because their costs of living and their living situations are so radically different. So oftentimes people try to convert things into, you know, what's a living wage, and it's difficult. Every farmer's situation is different. Cacao is usually their cash crop, but they're also growing other crops. They may have other jobs as well. But usually they're making decisions, and this is the really important thing to understand about particularly areas that are in the Amazon or in areas where rainforest is being lost. Farmers are making decisions about what they're going to do with their land. And if they're not getting a good enough price for the cacao that they're growing, they're going to switch to something else. And everything else that they switch to, which may be completely out of necessity if they're not making enough for their family from their cacao, everything else that they're going to switch to means that they're going to cut down every single tree on their farm, because they're going to switch to African palm, they're going to switch to papaya, they're going to switch to cattle. We have areas where we're working where they're switching to Pineapple now that's coming in a big way in one area. So those decisions we can affect if we're able to give them a better price for their cacao that's related directly to their quality, because many of these places have extraordinary cacao that you're not going to find in the places that produce bulk cacao. The other thing that people really need to understand is that the prices that the Kraft chocolate makers pay, like Raka and Dandelion and Parliament, are significantly above the fair trade prices that you might, see from fair trade chocolate, or just a plain organic chocolate bar that you might buy. So it's a big difference. Those fair trade and organic bars, you're not getting the quality, and really the price differential for the farmer is just practically nothing.
If I may add to that.
Sure.
The world market price about 50 years ago for cocoa was in the neighborhood of $2 a kilogram or $2,000 a ton, and it's still in the neighborhood of $2,000 a ton, $2 a kilogram. And that is not adjusted for inflation. Easily looked up if you're interested in looking at it. But a Hershey bar was 5 cents 50 years ago, and it's certainly not 5 cents today. And so I think one of the reasons that paying higher prices is just such an important part of this is, cocoa farmers are running a business just like we are. And the biggest difference is they don't often have as much control over their price, because there's a commodity market that essentially is telling the buyers, here's what you should be paying this person for the product that they're creating. Nate gets to choose the price he sells his bars for. I get to choose the price I sell my bars for. Cocoa farmers don't often get that if they're selling into a commodity market. And so part of the reason to work directly with cocoa farmers and people who work directly with cocoa farmers is because it means that you can start paying sort of more appropriate amounts for the cocoa instead of what the commodity market is sort of dictating, which, it's pretty easy to look at what the prices are and realize that's not a terribly fair system.
Well, and stable amounts too. That's the thing that I always come back to, like, to touch on what both Greg and Steve have said, like, fair trade cacao is still tied to a premium above commodity, and the commodity price fluctuates from year to year. So everyone has fixed costs associated with living. It doesn't matter where you live. You need gasoline for your motorcycle. You need to go and buy a bag of rice. You need to buy painkillers for aches and pains. So you have fixed costs, and the way the commodity market works is 1 year you're going to get paid one price, and the next year you're going to get paid a price. You could get paid a price that's less than that, and you don't really have a choice to if that were to happen to any of us, we would just quit our jobs and go find a different job. If you're a subsistence farmer, you can't do that. And so your option is the option that Steve has laid out, which is to find a cash crop that's paying you more than cacao. That's really your only option, because you're beholden to this market that is not thinking about you at all.
And I think the phrase fair trade came up, and you'll see that label on a lot of different products. And the important thing to know is that at this point, it doesn't really mean a lot anymore. If someone has a different feeling about that, let me know. But my understanding is that fair trade thing is like it's greenwashing. It's it kind of makes you feel good, but it doesn't sound like it actually gets more money to the farmers.
It does set a floor, which I think is important. And what we're interested in doing is, finding the ceiling, both for what a chocolate bar can taste like and also what a farmer can get paid. So I think there is something to be said for finding the floor. But yeah, the problem with it is that it's still tied to what the commodity price is.
I think it's also one of the main reasons we're not certified fair trade is I've never met a cocoa farmer who wants us to be certified fair trade. It's like, so consumers look for it, but if the farmers don't want it, then the question is it really better for the farmers? And the answer is, most of the vast majority, and by vast majority, I mean vast majority of cocoa farmers clearly don't have like labor issues on their farms or any of these kinds of things. And so to pay a certification price to certify that the product they're making doesn't have any, slave labor or child labor into it is almost offensive to them.
Yeah.
That there's an
Right.
assumption that they would be doing it, right? It's kind of like, like
Well,
if
that's the
someone-
thing I think consumers don't understand is that
Yeah.
it's the farmer that pays for fair trade certification. It's not the chocolate bar that has the fair trade label on it that's paying for that fair trade certification. It's the farmer that pays to be fair trade certified.
Yeah, the other complication to it, we talk about child labor, but I think you guys can or know this truer than I do, but in many cases, these are families that are out in the jungle, and of course the kids work. Of course the kids help. They do in Iowa and they do in California and wherever farmers are. That's part of the deal. In a lot of this comes out of the Ivory Coast in Africa. Whatever you do, don't get chocolate from the Ivory Coast. 90% of the country is deforested, and it's not a good situation. And now for something completely different. So one thing you should know about these bars is that they are almost vintage dated. If you buy one of these bars today and you get the same bar, or at least what it looks the same because it has the same name and origin, a year from now, it may taste a little different. That it's vintage, it's from a particular crop. And so the question is, on one of the bars, it says, enjoy by April 2022. And talk a little bit about what that really means. I mean, I think in general, chocolate has a longer shelf life, but sometimes it's been a while between the harvest and when someone eats it. And that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing at all. I mean, chocolate has a lot of tannins, the same way that wine has a lot of tannins. It has a lot of acidity, the same way that wine has a lot of acidity. And those are the two things that you look for in wine to determine how long you can age it for. And so the same is sort of true in chocolate. If you have a material that's high tannin and high acid, it's going to age really well. And so chocolate is like that. The bar that she's referencing that says April 2022, we tend to put about 16 months on our bars because we don't want any of them to sit in a warehouse where we're not able to control the storage for more than 2 summers. And so that's why we, the temper of the chocolate can go bad if it sits in the wrong storage conditions for too long. And so that's why we tend to not put more than a 16-month. But if you have it in your house and you have it in a cool, dark, low humid space, you can age it for years.
And preferably in a sealed container.
Yeah, you don't want moths or ants or anything attracted to it.
Well, and the air too.
Yeah.
And moisture. I mean, I think one of the main things is you're as Nate said, you're trying to kind of avoid moisture because sort of, the chocolate bars are a fat system. And so they're very low moisture environments, and you start introducing moisture and it can grow things in it, but it also will mess with the eventual texture of the bar once you eat it.
You won't have that snap that John's bar had when we first started.
Could you hear the snap, by the way?
Yeah, we could. It was a good snap. I was impressed.
All right. We have another question. So a lot you deal with is grown in an agroforestry system, right? There's animals around. Do they eat the pods sometimes? Do the farmers lose cacao to the animals? Maybe Steve knows.
Yeah, they do. It's not the biggest problem typically. There are occasionally some farms that will really get overrun with squirrels, or sometimes have a problem with birds. But typically it's not a huge problem. Diseases, fungal diseases are usually a much bigger problem for farmers. But yes, squirrels and birds can be a problem, and monkeys sometimes will be a problem. But it's not going to be something that's going to damage the harvest too much.
Well,
Great.
Steve, I think
the
people
packs-
were an issue. There was I remember one part of the filming, we'd traveled for like 2 days up a river to go back to a community that that was just about to have their harvest, and we got there and the kids had kind of gone through and just eaten all the cacao fruit, and we'd lost like enough that we couldn't actually get a sample out of that entire area. So I think people just eating the cacao fruit itself is,
Children,
issue.
yes, children specifically.
Yeah. I was told by a farmer in Venezuela that their biggest pest is children.
Yeah.
Because it's tasty, like.
Although
children?
my understanding is that many of the farmers, until probably you guys showed up, many of the farmers had never actually tasted a chocolate bar. Is that true?
It depends where you are in the world.
Yeah.
In some parts of the world, cocoa is a crop, and so they sell it like they'd sell any other crop. In other parts of the world, cocoa has been a part of their food system and their culture for way longer than it has for way longer than America has existed for. So it just it depends on where you are. In general, this is a gross overgeneralization, but in general, places where people eat the cocoa and are like turning it into, whether it's drinks or food or other sorts of things, tend to have better tasting cocoa because they're eating it themselves and aren't looking at it as just a crop. But again, the bar that you have from Madagascar and from Tanzania, neither of those places is cocoa considered something that any locals eat, but they both are making great cocoa.
Right.
I
have another question. Go ahead.
Just quickly, at one point I asked the main character in the film, Florencia, and I think this kind of highlights the importance of direct trade connections with the chocolate makers and actually kind of highlighting the supply chain. I asked her, like, where does your cacao go to once you've grown it? And she goes, oh, I don't know. I think maybe to Lima. And I was like, right, okay. And I was like, do you know what they do with it there? And I was like, I think they drink it. And I was like, amazing. Like, it's not working right now. This is like truly like a commodity crop. And the connection is not there. So I think it's interesting when you see like people like Steve and the chocolate makers coming down there and actually like having face-to-face time with the chocolate makers. I think, with the cacao growers, I think it highlights the importance of that supply chain connection as well.
Here's an odd question. How many cacao beans go into a typical chocolate bar? And I'm guessing it depends on the beans and the size of the beans and all that, but go ahead and try to answer it.
Nate, do you want to do this one or should I?
Either of us can take it. You
Yeah.
can go for it.
So cocoa beans on average, again, all cocoa beans are different, agricultural crop, et cetera, are about 1 gram. So if you have a 58-gram chocolate bar, it's about 58 cocoa beans to make that bar. Now, in terms of how many beans are in a pod, again, lots of different things, but you can say somewhere between 25 to 50 beans in a pod. And so really rough math is, 1 to 2 pods is what goes into the making of a single chocolate bar.
Wow. Well, that kind of puts it in
That would be my
perspective, doesn't it?
answer, too. So that would be my answer too.
Nate and I talk a lot. This is like we try to make sure we're in good alignment. It's not price fixing. That's not. It's
we've got the industry. It's not like a company PR sheet. It's like an industry PR sheet. We are constantly editing it.
Tim, I'm wondering. So how long ago did you finish the film?
We started the project 4 years ago. It took 2 years of filming. The first year we went down to the Amazon with Steve and the group of chocolate makers. And then the next year we went back down again during harvest season to kind of spend a lot more time trying to piece together the story of the cacao growers. So it was about 2 years of filming, plus, you know, a bit of stuff in the US and at the chocolate makers and stuff. And then about a year of post-production and editing and scrounging for money and begging probably most of the people on the screens right now for some money. But yeah, so it took some time, but you know, we're happy that it's out there now.
Well, my question is, so it's been a little while since you were doing the active research, but I'm sure the information keeps coming in. What have you learned since you finished the film that you might have included if you had now?
I mean, I honestly feel like we could have made 3 separate feature films about the information that we had in the first place. One kind of, I don't know, one testament to the difficulty of what all of these guys do down there and what the cacao growers go through down there is the final scene, which is, you know, is the uplifting. We're replanting these seeds so that we can, you know, go forth and have this new crop. And, you know, we worked with the local university down there to grow these new plants, and we'd have a new origin, all this kind of stuff. You know, for me, the film was like, that's great. That's like a nice ending. The reality is the next year a storm came through and wiped out every tree that that was planted, and the cycle goes on. You know, the work kind of restarts. And I think, you know, these guys all have stories of that happening just so many times that I think it really like speaks to how challenging the work life is down there as well.
I have another question. They're asking, is cacao also native to Africa, or was it brought there from South America? I think it's the latter, right? It originated in South and Central America?
In South America, yes.
And I assume somewhere in the Amazon, yeah?
Yes, generally, yeah.
And then, like a lot of other crops, you know, the colonial, during the colonial period, people started moving plants and crops around the world to plant it elsewhere. And like with coffee and tea and things like that. And in fact, coffee is sort of a similar product. And what gives me some encouragement is that, well, I can tell by looking at everybody, I'm the old guy here. And I can tell you about where coffee was in the late 1970s when I started writing about food in America. And Folgers was about it, you know, the Hershey's of coffee. And nobody knew nothing. There weren't any Starbucks, and people wanted to pay 10 cents for a cup of coffee, and it had no cachet. Over the years, of course, that's all changed, and now you have these hipsters paying $10 for a cup of coffee, and they're perfectly able to rationalize that. And I think in time that same thing might happen to chocolate.
I think a fun fact about cocoa in Africa is that while it's absolutely true, cocoa very much is a colonial crop, and that's how it got to most of the world. The 2 largest growers of cocoa in the world today are Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. And in both of those places, cocoa was not brought in as a colonial crop. It was actually brought in by farmers themselves because they felt like it could be a good income source. And so it's kind of, it got to Africa through colonization, no question about it. And I also think the perception of cocoa being a cheap crop is because it was a colonial crop. And so since for a very long time, people haven't paid much money for it. So the assumption is it's not worth very much money. But it's interesting that the 2 largest growers in the world now are not people that were growing it because it was a colonial crop.
Right. And I think the thing to explain to folks about how all the other cacao works in the world, at least as far as I understand it, is that all these small farmers in all these places, you know, they sell their beans to a central co-op or a group, and then those get combined with other beans, and then they're processed, and there's futures in cocoa powder and cocoa butter, and it's undistinguished. There's no way to track at all where that cocoa and cocoa butter came from. Is that basically right?
I mean, more or less, yeah. I think one of the things you said in there that's really important to highlight is I think a lot of people think of sort of large scale crops such as cocoa. They think of massive plantations where there's some like wealthy farm owner who is like growing all this cocoa and has like all these poorly paid workers, on their farm. Not true at all for cocoa. The vast majority of cocoa in the world, well over 95% of the cocoa in the world is grown by smallholder farmers, people who have 2 to 10 acres of land, and
or less, or
yeah, exactly. Sometimes
in Africa,
less.
a lot less.
Yeah, and so these are people who like have a small amount of land and are growing a crop to make a small amount of money off that small amount of land. And so this isn't sort of like when you talk about like large scale chocolate or bulk cacao, it's not coming from massive mega farms, it's coming from smallholders.
Yeah, we just got our first, we're trying to get as granular as we can with our traceability, and we just got our first report from the organization that we work with in Uganda. And just as an example, we bought 12.5 metric tons of cocoa from them in December. The transaction report for that 12.5 metric tons of cocoa is 25 pages long. So that's how many individual transactions there were with small shareholder farmers. So it's tiny amounts that are being traded for tiny amounts of money, several times a week, basically. So
and then it all gets aggregated into this mass, literally. Let's see. And audience members, do you have any more questions for our celebrated panelists here? And while I'm waiting to see if there's more questions, do any of you have some other things you wanted to let folks know, either about your own work or cacao in general? They're thinking.
Well, just that
What are you working on now?
in different ways, we're all of us dealing with the pandemic as well. And so the support that people can give for, their local chocolate makers, for craft chocolate makers, that's being connected out to the farmers that, they're sourcing from. There's a lot of projects that I work with that I'm not able to get to because in part I work principally with indigenous communities, and it's just not possible with the pandemic for me to go and visit until I'm able to get vaccinated. So it's really difficult times for everyone all over, but just like, trying to give some support to your local restaurants or other local businesses, don't forget your craft chocolate makers out there, because it's making a big difference right now.
So Steve, where can folks find out more information about the work that you're doing?
They can go to the website of the organization, which is very simple. It's just conservationcacao.com, or to Instagram and follow me there.
That's conservationcacao.com.
Yeah.
Great. Oh, we do have another question. Anyone else after that question prompt? Or we do have a question. I'm sorry?
The next question that just came up, I think is always a good one. Of what
yes, this is recommended pairings with chocolate. They're asking, is it wine? Is it cheese? Is it fruit? And there's a lot of sort of conventional things that have gotten paired with chocolate. I mean, often it's berries or red fruits, red wines often, and that we've talked about the comparison between wine and chocolate and coffee. Cheese is an interesting possibility. What do you
Cheese is a
think?
great possibility. I love cheese and chocolate. They pair really well together. Like I love chocolate and I love red wine. I don't particularly like them together. I feel like the combo has a negative effect on either just because of the high level of tannins in both foods. And cheese the
So
same.
what kind of chocolate and what kind of cheese?
Oh man.
Well, let's assume it's a 70% dark great chocolate, but so are you pairing it with a creamy triple
Yeah, with a creamy
cream
soft cheese for sure. Yeah, love love a 70%. Either one of the ones that you mentioned, either the Tanzania or the Madagascar, like something like that that has a lot of fruit notes. Pairing that with a soft cheese is excellent.
I know it sounds like I'm going to be shamelessly plugging. I guess I am going to be shamelessly plugging. For Valentine's Day, Jasper Hill, which is an awesome cheesemaker. Oh yeah, you might know them. Yeah. So we're doing a cheese and chocolate pairing event with them. I want to say next, like maybe it's on Valentine's Day or maybe it's the Friday before. And tickets are on sale now if people are interested in doing that. We're pairing 4 different bars with 4 different cheeses. And on that Thursday, I'm doing a mead and chocolate pairing. I know I love mead, and there's a great meadery called Hadron. You're not a mead fan? I'm hanging up. I'm sorry, I can't.
Well, no, I mean, often people think of mead as being this incredibly sweet and syrupy stuff,
yeah.
and there's some incredible meads and ciders now that have been introduced in the United States that are just exceptional.
Yeah, and so there's a great meadery in Marin, just sort of north of San Francisco, called Hadron Meadery, so they're pairing 3 of their single varietal honey meads with 3 of our chocolate bars, and so that's another event that is going to be coming up soon. And I wish I had like links. Maybe I'll send the link later. But we love pairing. I also, tea and chocolate is one of my favorite pairings.
I was just going to say, I just did a pairing event for a company recently, and it was during work time. Originally, they thought, well, let's get some wines or liqueurs or things, and that wasn't going to work. And they said, well, let's do tea, and it was wonderful. It turned out to a Darjeeling with a 70% dark. The tannins in it went perfectly together. It was really a nice experience. But now I've got to find a cheese company locally and get them to do a cheese and chocolate tasting, just so I can eat the cheese.
That's why we do most of the pairings, is we like to eat the other stuff. We get lots of chocolate, but
Right. Question has come up. What are your favorite chocolate bars, not from your own company or just at all? Tim, what's your favorite chocolate bar? There's a touchy question.
It is a touchy. I mean, both of the chocolate makers both Greg and Nate's chocolates are right up there. And honestly, Parliament are definitely some of my favorites as well. I think Dick Taylor are fantastic producers. Since being back in Australia, I haven't had anything to do with the Australian chocolate community. So we've been kind of discovering these great producers in Australia. And one in particular who's just phenomenal, and I love her and I love her work. I think you know her, Greg, is Yoon from the Smooth Chocolator. She's fantastic. And then I've had some interesting stuff here, which has been more like, I guess at this point, more thought-provoking than palate-pleasing, but from Australian-grown cacao, which is just like a bit of an interesting, nearly all cacao around the world is grown in, developing countries, and to try to grow cacao in a country with, a quite high minimum wage, which is very labor intensive, ends up making, I don't know, I find that story very interesting. And cacao's come from, I think from Dominican Republic, and they're growing it here in far north Queensland in the tropical rainforest up there. So yeah, it's been fun to kind of explore a new world of chocolate out here.
But you didn't like the 70% chocolate with kangaroo?
It's a good pairing.
Maybe has a mole sauce. Steve, what's your favorite chocolate bar?
Oh boy. Well, I think I have to mention the other chocolate makers that I work with
Of
that
course,
were
of course.
in the film that also do really great work. So there's some folks based out of Atlanta, Chocolatl,
Yeah.
chocolate out of Atlanta, really wonderful. They won good food awards with the cacao being sourced from the areas that you see in the documentary, and also French broad out of North Carolina. Really fantastic stuff.
Right. And Greg?
I would say Soma from Toronto is probably my favorite chocolate maker.
Sure.
Those guys
Very
are just killing it. They like and they ship to the US if people are interested. They only sell in like 10 to 15 stores in the US. Although Boulder Bookstore might be one of them.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Soma, if you ever try a Soma bar, or see a bar from Soma, I encourage you to try it. It's very tasty.
And the thing I love about all of these chocolate companies, I've tasted so many of them in the past year from all over the world. You know, we did one tasting that was just chocolate from Vietnam.
Yeah.
And so vastly different. But you know, in each case, I'm not saying you guys are quirky, but the chocolate artisans, the people who are behind all of these chocolate bar companies are really interesting individuals. Sometimes they have very different paths as scientists or something else, and then they fell in love with chocolate, and they really, you know, devote themselves and creatively to this whole thing. So it's really wonderful.
I think that's a great point as well, John, and why I think it's such a fascinating subject. And I do think I think the takeaway of the film, or what like I hope the takeaway of the film would be to just ask constant questions of the people who are producing your products. And they want to, like, anyone who's proud of the product that they're producing and proud of how they've gone about producing that product, want to tell you their story desperately, and also holds their feet to the fire a little bit as well, to know that people are actually paying attention to the fact that, you know, we want to know where the product is coming from. We want to know that there's an equitable supply chain in it, and we want to know that people are getting looked after all the way up and down.
Let's hear it for transparency.
Let's hear
Well,
it for transparency.
you know, I have this feeling that this particular group could go on talking for several hours about all this and not run out of things to talk about, but we do have to wrap it up. And the final question to each of you is, tell me a little bit about the future of chocolate as you see it, and the good and the bad. Let's start with Nate.
Oh, you're gonna put me on the spot first.
Yes.
All right, let me think here.
Do you need some thinking music?
Yeah, exactly.
Dun.
Start with the good. I think that you know what we just said. Like, let's hear it for transparency. I think that the consumer is starting to come around on a lot of these issues that we're talking about, and things like this documentary like help that. And so you see it in like a lot of other industries too. And I think the thing that I went to a consortium with the Specialty Coffee Association at Emory University in Atlanta last year. And one of the things that the Specialty Coffee Association was so intrigued by when I was talking with them is the fact that we're building out our supply chain now. So we have the opportunity to build a transparent supply chain because we're sort of blazing new ground. And so that's one of the things that the Specialty Coffee Association was sort of a regret that they hadn't thought more about transparency in the early days of craft coffee. And so they're trying to work backwards now to get the level of transparency that we're able to have. And they're worried because there's so many different brokers on the ground. And so the ability that we have to print our pricing and print our farm gate pricing, a lot of people in the coffee industry don't have that ability. And so I think leading the way in helping other industries, not just in chocolate, but helping other industries like brainstorm about ways to be more transparent. It's a big thing in cosmetics right now. It's a big thing in clothing. And so I think we really have an opportunity to lead the way with transparency.
Steve, what about the future?
Yeah, I think, again, sort of continuing on with that theme of transparency, one of the things that we see all over is there's so much more opportunity now with developments in technology, with satellite monitoring, with the emphasis on trying to eliminate deforestation from supply chains. There's so much that can be done, so much potential, but consumers and the craft chocolate industry as well is really going to have to work to try and build their own ways of reaching farmers. The large companies are going to have their initiatives because they don't want to be associated with deforestation, just like they don't want to be, associated with child slavery. But they're only going to do the minimum. They're not going to do the things that are possible with these new technologies, with the transparency that we can build. So we really need to continue to try and innovate, do all that we can to reach out and have an impact, not just on the price, but also what's happening with these agricultural frontier areas. How can we make a difference there for conservation, for eliminating deforestation for these people? And to do that, we're going to have to be innovative, and the whole industry really needs to scale. I have so many more farmers that I could help, but we don't have enough demand. We're not seeing craft chocolate take off to the degree anything like what happened with specialty coffee. There's no Starbucks of chocolate. So everybody needs to pitch in and eat some more chocolate.
Well, maybe there should be something like that. Greg?
Yeah, no, actually, it's interesting you say that maybe there should be. That's what I was going to say is, like, I think we do need in the craft chocolate and specialty cocoa industry, you do need a Starbucks, right? Where it's kind of like it's not a $10 bar, but it's a higher price bar that's using much higher priced cocoa. And Raka could be that company, I mean, like, I think Raka could grow to that kind of scale. But we need somebody who can really sort of like raise the whole industry up. And I think it'll happen. I think somebody will figure out how to do it. I think right now we're all kind of figuring out how to keep, I mean, Nate mentioned that, they're almost to break even. I'd like to say we're almost to break even, but that might be an exaggeration. And so I think we're still trying to figure out how all of this works. But I think one of the things that I really love about the craft chocolate industry is we all do it together. I mean, like, Nate was only half kidding when he said, like, there's a PR sheet for the industry we're reading off of. Like, we do talk to each other. We all work together. We share with each other what's going well, what's going badly, try to help each other out. And I think it both makes it for an enjoyable industry to work in, but also an industry that works together is less likely to have issues with lack of transparency because you call each other out on it. As well as sort of customers and other people calling you out on it. And so I do think in sort of working together, somebody will come out and sort of take the lead on being the Starbucks of craft chocolate. And I think that's one of the things the industry really needs, but I think it'll happen. So I'm excited for that.
And I would point towards the craft brewing industry, also craft distilling. Here in Colorado, it's kind of the Silicon Valley of this thing. But one of the things that happened here that came out because a lot of these people were homebrewers is that there's an extraordinary amount of collaboration amongst the brewers. It's just not, yeah, sure, it's competitive, but collaboration means that all boats rise. So I think there's a big future in that. I'm going to leave it to Tim to kind of wrap things up after the movie and look ahead. Well, maybe you could, if you were going to do a sequel.
I'm not going to do a sequel.
No, but what do you think the future of chocolate is?
I think, I mean, all those guys are way smarter and more tapped into the industry than I am. But I mean, in terms of the film and and actually like taps on each and everything that each of the people that we're talking about. I do think education is a really big part of it. And what I would love to see the film do is go into some universities as a part of a course subject to get like another generation coming through. And who knows if that, you know, gives a tap to a young entrepreneur or a young scientist or a young food anthropologist who it just opens up this whole new world of education and innovation. So if anyone has any ideas of how to get this film into schools and universities, I think it would be a really interesting and beneficial thing. Yeah.
Well, the combination between widespread education and the Starbucks of Cacao might make a big difference in the future. And so I think we'll welcome our host back and wrap things up.
Well, thank you, John, and thank you to the panel. This was really interesting. I have been a fan of chocolate ever since I met Nathan Miller, who is a dear friend of mine when he lived here in Colorado. And I have one of his bars that I'm going to indulge in after this. But for anyone who is here in Colorado looking to explore chocolate, I have been exploring chocolate on my food tours for 9 years, and I'm proud to say I do it in all 3 cities. So I just want to give a shout out real quick. If you're in Denver, I would go to Temper Chocolate, which is in the Denver Central Market, and they have beautiful bonbons that they make, but they have an exquisite line, a very curated line of Kraft chocolate that comes from all over the nation and all over the world that you might want to explore. In Boulder, Cured does a wonderful job curating their line of chocolate, as well as Peace Lovin' Chocolate, which is our independent chocolate boutique, which I always love to tell people to visit instead of some type of chain store chocolate shop. And up in Fort Collins, Toby Gadd has Nuance Chocolate, where he has the largest selection of single origin bean to bar chocolate in the nation. And you can explore with your extra $100 that you're going to spend on chocolate, because they are $10 to $15 chocolate bars, single varietals from different countries, different regions of the same country. It's incredibly interesting to taste what the terroir of certain areas is, and that's a really wonderful place to do it. So that's my plug for the places that I feature on my tours, because I love them and they all are independently owned and they all do a wonderful job. Thank you to our panel. And this was a great discussion, and we are recording this discussion and we're building out our YouTube channel for the Flatirons Food Film Festival. So all of you viewers will, in that email that you're going to be getting about the survey we want you to fill out, you'll be getting a link to the YouTube channel. We're going to ask you to subscribe, because we need to get people to subscribe so that we can give it a custom name. We're so in the beginning of our YouTube channel. So support us in that endeavor, and then you'll be able to share this conversation with all of your chocolate loving friends and everyone who says, why the hell would you spend $10 on a chocolate bar? You can say, well, here, learn about it. So thank you all. Thank you, the viewers, and we'll see you soon. Good night.